After the mass extinction at the end of the Triassic, 201 million years ago, the Earth was quite empty. The Jurassic began, and the dinosaurs no longer had any major rivals on land. The climate became warmer and more humid, and the dry deserts of the Triassic shrank. The Earth turned greener. In the Jurassic, vast forests of conifers, ginkgos, and cycads grew, plants that looked like palms but weren't. Between them spread horsetails that shot up like giant bamboo stalks. The ground was covered with dense carpets of ferns and mosses. There were still no colorful flowering plants. They wouldn't appear until much later. But in the late Jurassic, the first flower precursors began to emerge, simple seed plants that paved the way for the plant world of the Cretaceous. While the first pterosaurs circled in the skies, the true giants lived on the ground of the Jurassic realm, the sauropods. With their long necks, massive bodies, and whip-like tails, these gentle giants were the largest land animals that ever existed. Some grew over 30 meters long and weighed more than 50 tons. The key to their size lay in their body design. Their bones were hollow inside and filled with air chambers, light enough to be carried by powerful muscles, yet strong enough to support their enormous weight. Their legs stood like columns directly under their bodies, similar to elephants, only much more massive. Their long necks allowed them to strip entire treetops without having to move their bodies constantly. Some species, like Brachiosaurus, could raise their heads as high as a 6-story building, while others, like Diplodocus, used their extreme length to cover wide areas. To meet their energy needs, sauropods had to eat hundreds of kilos of plants every day. Their teeth were simple plucking or stripping tools, which they used to pull a branch through their mouths, stripping the leaves off as they went. Most of the food was swallowed without chewing. Inside their enormous digestive system, bacteria and swallowed stones did the rest of the work. Despite their peaceful way of life, they were not defenseless. With their tails, they could lash out like gigantic whips, fast enough to keep predators at a distance. Many sauropods lived in herds. Together, they protected their young, and their sheer size made them almost untouchable. In the Jurassic, there were many species: the towering Brachiosaurus, the extremely long Diplodocus, and the massive Apatosaurus. They all made the Jurassic the true age of giants. Their size alone made them nearly invulnerable. But of course, there were also predators in the Jurassic, and where giant plant-eaters live, giant meat-eating hunters are never far away. They were the top predators of their time, perfectly built for hunting, strength, and endurance. The largest and one of the best-known hunters of this era was Allosaurus. Reaching up to 9 meters in length, with powerful hind legs and sharp teeth, it was widespread across the landscapes of North America and Europe. Its skull was lighter than that of the later T-Rex, but it could open its jaws especially wide, almost like a modern crocodile, ideal for grabbing and tearing flesh. Allosaurus probably didn't take on large, healthy sauropods alone, but instead targeted injured or young animals, or used its strength to steal prey from other hunters. Alongside it hunted Ceratosaurus, easily recognized by the small horn on its snout and the bony ridges above its eyes. It was a bit smaller than Allosaurus, but possibly faster and more agile. Fossil evidence suggests that it hunted both on land and in shallow water, a flexible predator that fed on fish, crocodile-like creatures, and smaller dinosaurs. Dilophosaurus lived 193 million years ago. A fast runner, it grew up to 7 meters long and had 2 crests on its head that made it unmistakable. In Europe roamed Megalosaurus, about 7 to 9 meters long, and one of the first dinosaurs that science, in the 19th century, recognized as a dinosaur. It was sturdily built, with strong legs for short sprints and powerful arms for holding on to prey. There were also many smaller theropods, some with feathers, that hunted insects, lizards, or small dinosaurs. Compsognathus, for example. It was barely longer than a chicken, slender in build, with long legs and a light body. Compsognathus probably hunted insects, lizards, and small mammals. Its speed was its greatest weapon. It could snap quickly and vanish just as fast before larger predators could catch it. Despite its small size, it was a successful dinosaur and shows that even in the realm of giants, the smallest still had their place. These theropods did not always hunt alone. Some finds suggest that allosaurs hunted in loose groups to bring down bigger prey like young diplodocus or stegosaurs. Others ambushed, like modern big cats, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Their teeth were like steak knives, sharp and serrated to slice flesh and cause bleeding. A single bite was often enough to weaken prey and chase it until it collapsed. Around this time, the first crocodiles as we know them today also appeared. Their ancestors, too, had survived the mass extinction because they were able to live in many different habitats. Many of these early crocodile-like creatures still had a back armor made of bony plates that protected them from attacks. Alongside predators and long-necked giants, the Jurassic was also home to plant-eaters that didn't rely on size alone, but on protection, the stegosaurs. With their unique body design, they were like walking fortresses, and any predator had to think twice before daring to attack. Stegosaurus, the most famous of its family, grew up to 9 meters long. Its back was decorated with 2 rows of large, upright, bony plates running from neck to tail. At the end of its tail, it carried 4 long, sharp spikes, the thagomizer. A strike with them could cause serious injuries to an attacker. The plates were more than just armor. Inside them ran many blood vessels, suggesting they served for temperature regulation, like radiators in a machine. They may also have been able to change color to intimidate rivals or impress mates. The rumor that dinosaurs had brains the size of a walnut actually goes back to Stegosaurus. This impressive animal reached up to 9 meters in length, but had a brain that was indeed only about the size of a walnut. In proportion to its body size, Stegosaurus had one of the smallest brains among dinosaurs. However, Stegosaurus was an exception and not representative of all dinosaurs. Many theropods, such as Velociraptor or Troodon, had much larger brains relative to their body size and likely showed more complex behavior. Research suggests that some dinosaur species had good memory, spatial awareness, and may have been capable of cooperative hunting. So the image of the stupid dino is very outdated. The intelligence of dinosaurs was as diverse as their shapes and ways of life. And after all, who needs high intelligence when you're a living tank with a spiked club? In Africa, at the same time, lived Kentrosaurus, a smaller relative of Stegosaurus. It had fewer but sharper plates and even more spikes that stretched far down its back. Its defense was so effective that even large theropods had to stay cautious. Stegosaurs were pure plant eaters, probably feeding on low shrubs, ferns, and soft plant parts. Their mouths were narrow, ideal for plucking, and they had to eat large amounts to meet their needs. Despite their powerful defenses, they probably lived in groups to warn each other and protect their young. There were also smaller plant eaters in the Jurassic that were much more agile, the ornithopods. One of them was Camptosaurus, about 5 to 7 meters long, with strong hind legs for fast running and a beak-like mouth, perfect for plucking leaves and ferns. Ornithopods could move on 2 or 4 legs. They probably lived in herds and were well protected from predators that way. They were considered the all-rounders among plant eaters, not as big as the sauropods and not as armored as the stegosaurs, but adaptable and successful. Later, in the Cretaceous, they would evolve into the famous duck-billed dinosaurs. In the ecosystems of the Jurassic, the meat-eating predators kept the balance. They kept plant-eater populations healthy by mainly hunting the weak and the sick. At the same time, they themselves had to stay alert. Even a fully grown Allosaurus could quickly become the hunted if an angry sauropod or an armored stegosaur fought back. But even though the dinosaurs ruled the land in the Jurassic, another group of animals continued to live in the shadows of the giants, the early mammals. They were tiny, barely bigger than a mouse, and usually came out only at night. Species like Morganucodon or Megazostrodon ate insects, worms, and perhaps seeds. During the day, they hid in burrows or among roots to avoid ending up in the jaws of dinosaurs. They already had fur, drank milk from their mothers, and were surprisingly quick. They played only a small role in the ecosystems, but without them, we wouldn't exist today. We humans are among their distant descendants. Everywhere in the Jurassic, there was buzzing, crawling, and fluttering. Beetles, dragonflies, cockroaches, and early flies were everywhere. Some dragonflies, like Protolindinia, had wingspans as large as a dinner plate. Even the first butterfly-like insects were already fluttering through the forests, though without colorful flowers, since those didn't exist yet. Many of these insects pollinated ferns, ginkgos, and seed plants. For the tiny mammals, they were a main source of food, and many small dinosaurs hunted them as well. Without the constant buzzing and crawling, the Jurassic world would have been much quieter and emptier. While dinosaurs spread across the land, the seas had very different rulers, the ichthyosaurs. The word means fish lizard, but they were neither fish nor dinosaurs. They were their own group of marine reptiles, which had already appeared in the Triassic, survived the mass extinction, and reached their greatest diversity in the Jurassic. At first, in the late Triassic, many ichthyosaurs were only a few meters long, but in the early Jurassic, some grew to gigantic sizes. Species like Temnodontosaurus reached up to 12 meters long, about the length of a city bus, and weighed several tons. Some finds from England even show ichthyosaurs with eyes almost 30 centimeters across, the largest eyes ever found in any animal. With such eyes, they could still see even in great depths. Ichthyosaurs were perfect swimmers. Their bodies were streamlined. Their front and back legs had turned into flippers, and their tails were shaped vertically like those of sharks, ideal for quick bursts of speed. With sharp teeth, they grabbed slippery prey and swallowed it in big gulps. They ate fish and squid, and larger species probably hunted other marine reptiles as well. Like whales today, they had to come to the surface to breathe. And like whales, they gave birth to live young. They didn't lay eggs. In the early Jurassic, they were the undisputed top predators of the seas. They swam in all the world's oceans, from the tropical coasts of Africa to the cooler seas around what is now Europe. From the late Jurassic onward, they were gradually pushed aside by other predators. But in the time we are speaking of, nothing in the oceans could threaten a fully grown ichthyosaur. They were the blue whales of their age, fast, powerful, and at home everywhere. At the same time, there were the plesiosaurs, the underwater flyers. With four strong flippers, they glided through the seas like birds in the sky. During this time, plesiosaurs evolved from small newcomers into the second great rulers of the oceans. There were two main forms: the long-necked plesiosaurs with tiny heads, perfect for snapping up fish among schools, and the short to thick-necked pliosaurs with skulls as large as bathtubs, dagger-like teeth, and a bite that could bring down even large prey. Some species, like Pliosaurus funki or Liopleurodon, grew over 10 meters long, true apex predators. Their bite was among the strongest ever measured. They spread to almost all of the world's seas, from tropical coasts to cooler regions. They too breathed air and had to surface regularly, but underwater they could stay for astonishingly long periods. Just like the ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs also gave birth to live young. By the end of the Jurassic, they would replace the ichthyosaurs as the top predators of the oceans. While ichthyosaurs were fast pursuers, plesiosaurs probably often relied on ambush. They could hover silently in the water for long periods and then shoot forward with their flippers in a lightning-fast burst. Whether it was the swift-hunting ichthyosaurs or the lurking pliosaurs, underwater in the Jurassic, there was no room for weakness. Those that didn't swim fast enough were eaten. These giants shared their habitat with countless smaller animals: ammonites, spiral-shelled squid-like creatures, and belemnites, arrow-shaped relatives of squid, were so numerous that their fossils today form entire layers of rock. In shallow, sunlit regions, massive coral reefs grew, teeming with fish, crabs, and other marine creatures. In the Jurassic, the seas were a complex network of predators and prey. As on land, there was a delicate balance, and only the best adapted species survived in this primeval world. Even before the dinosaurs became the giants of the Jurassic, other reptiles had already conquered the skies. The pterosaurs. They first appeared in the late Triassic, about 220 million years ago, and were the first vertebrates able to fly actively. Unlike birds, pterosaurs had no feathers but flight membranes stretched from an enormously elongated fourth finger down to the hind legs. Their bones were hollow and light, yet strong, perfect for saving weight while still withstanding the strain of flying. The first known pterosaurs, such as Eudimorphodon, were still relatively small, with wingspans of about 1 meter, sharp teeth, and long tails often stabilized with a small vein of skin. They probably hunted insects or small fish and lived near coasts. In the Jurassic, pterosaurs continued to evolve and spread into more and more habitats. Some remained small, agile insect hunters, while others became large fish hunters. One example is Rhamphorhynchus, a pterosaur with a wingspan of up to 1.8 meters, long pointed teeth, and a distinctive tail with a triangular skin vein. It lived along the coasts of the Jurassic seas and snatched fish straight from the water's surface. Another, Dimorphodon, had a shorter, sturdier skull with large eyes and could probably also catch prey on the ground when it wasn't flying. Pterosaurs were perfectly adapted to life in the air. They hunted over coasts, glided across the open sea, and landed only to rest or to lay eggs. Later in the Cretaceous, there would be a pterosaur of extraordinary size, but more on that later. For in the Jurassic, Another very special kind of dinosaur appeared, one that survives to this day. For millions of years, the skies had belonged solely to the pterosaurs. But in the late Jurassic, a new challenger arrived, an animal that looked like a small feathered dinosaur, but rose from the ground with strong wing beats, the first known bird. Its name, Archaeopteryx. With a wingspan of about half a meter, feathers like a modern bird, but with teeth, claws on its wings, and a long bony tail, it stood exactly between two worlds. All these features show that birds descended from small, feathered theropod dinosaurs. It probably couldn't fly long distances like a modern bird, but instead launched itself from elevated spots and glided short stretches. Perhaps it also flew from branch to branch with strong wing beats. Archaeopteryx lived in an island world of shallow lagoons, reefs, and forested coastlines. The climate was warm and humid, and the forests teemed with insects, small lizards, and young dinosaurs. It was probably an omnivore, hunting insects, small vertebrates, and perhaps pecking at fruits or seeds. Archaeopteryx may have marked the beginning of the age of birds. For a long time, people believed Archaeopteryx was the direct ancestor of all birds, the very first of its kind. But new fossil discoveries have introduced another possibility. Perhaps Archaeopteryx was not the beginning at all, but only one of several winged dinosaurs living at the time. In this second theory, the ancestors of birds had already evolved millions of years earlier as their own branch of the archosaurs. Archaeopteryx would then not be the first bird, but rather a close relative, a feathered dinosaur that conquered the skies while the true bird lineage was already underway. The only certainty is this: in the late Jurassic, there were not just one, but several species of feathered hunters, and the pterosaurs soon had competition for insects and fish. Around 145 million years ago, the Jurassic period came to an end. Not with a sudden bang, but with a slow transformation. The supercontinent Pangaea had long since broken apart. Laurasia now lay in the north, Gondwana in the south. New seaways opened, currents shifted, and entire climate zones moved. Nature responded. Between conifers, ferns, and ginkgos, cycads spread more and more, and the first precursors of flowering plants appeared. The giant sauropods developed new species to cope with the changing forests. Predators became faster, lighter, or more specialized. In the seas, new ichthyosaur and plesiosaur species arose, while sharks became more numerous. In the skies, pterosaurs grew into true giants, while on the ground more and more small, feathered dinosaurs lived, already very bird-like. The stage was set for the next chapter. With the beginning of the Cretaceous, the reign of the dinosaurs entered its final glorious phase.